We don't know for sure, but we have estimated that asteroids easily takes in around $10 million a week in quarters.
At this machine in Fresno, 18-year-old Greg Davies scored 15 million points, played 31 hours on 1 quarter.
You stood here for 31 hours?
No, I sat down.
But what about the UK? What were we doing all this time while the Americans and Japanese were creating classic software? Well, TV games, which were basically Pong under a variety of different names, thrived for a while. But when it came to writing our own software, a few Fred Harris-inspired boffins aside, nothing much was going on. We really didn't seem to be that computer literate.
Right. What's this? That's the printer.
But that was all set to change, thanks to this man. Clive Sinclair. His dream, a computer in every British home. Made by Sinclair, hopefully.
The Spectrum, of course, was always black, but this one was white because it was the millionth one made at Dundee. Indeed, the millionth made at all, because they made them all in those days. So that was the 1 millionth Spectrum ever made.
Bought by naive parents to help with your O-levels, all that we actually learnt was how to play games. Our really sad friends even wrote their own. But it was from these fetid teenage bedrooms that the British software industry would finally emerge. The early 1980s saw a home computing boom in the UK. It was led by a generation of acne-ridden, wispy-bearded bedroom programmers who could even create their own games, because unlike consoles, computers had keyboards. Even if they were as rubbish as the infamous rubber keyboard of the Sinclair Spectrum.
The Spectrum was massive because it was the first time there was a really relatively powerful consumer computer that you could buy games for. You could buy magazines and type games in from the magazines. They never worked, but it was fun for a while. And it encouraged a lot of people to start programming games. And you didn't need a large budget. You could do it in your bedroom all yourself over a couple of months. And some people made a lot of money out of it.
Manic Miner was Britain's first software blockbuster. You played Miner Willie, who had to jump his way through 20 screens of platforms collecting treasure, all to a continuous soundtrack, which had previously been thought impossible to do on the Sinclair machine. It also had a very British sense of humour. When you died, a Python-esque foot descended to crush the hapless miner. As if that weren't daunting enough, there are also mutant jellyfish and flying lavatories to contend with.
And here's Matthew Smith. Matthew, how on earth do you come to write a program like Manic Miner?
I do shut myself away for a while to actually get the program written.
Matthew Smith became very wealthy very quickly with the success of Manic Miner and its sequel, Jet Set Willy. But then he disappeared. He stopped writing games, and he vanished into video game myth. For the past few years, there's been a website up called Where is Matthew Smith? And people have been calling in sightings. According to some rumours, he was planting tulips in Amsterdam. Other people claim to have heard him calling in on radio talk shows or seeing him in the local supermarket.
I think it's going to get to a stage where one person can't write a whole game.
I was 17 when I wrote Manic Miner. From start to finish, I was in Italy drawing pictures of some levels with some water running down. And I came back, and in 8 weeks we were duplicating cassettes. I had a Tandy TRS-80, but it crashed every time anybody put the kettle on, so I had to work at night. My favourite monster in Manic Miner, I got the most compliments on the telephones. There was a game in an Atari written by an American called Bill Hogue. He was very much an inspiration. The game he wrote was Miner 2049er, which was a little man jumping around on platforms, collecting things and avoiding the baddies.
Sounds like a winner, I like it. Alright, Matt, we're here, we've got the Spectrum. Right, well, let's load up Manic Miner, the game that you obviously wrote. The Spectrum keys confuse me because it's got the words on there. This is load. Nice symbol shift.
I made the first screen fairly hard, just so a stranger to it could enjoy a lot of the frustration without having to get very good at it.
It is a simple mistake like that is enough to end it all. Where did the boot come from that kills you at the end? That all loses your chance?
At the top of the screen.
Well, that's no funny use. Manic Miner, this is the first game. Jet Set Willy is the sequel to it, isn't it? It's the same character and stuff. How long did that take to...
It was a slog getting Jet Set Willy finished.
Were they really pressuring you to come up with the next big hit? Were you getting people phoning you up saying, come on, man, you've got to do this?
Yeah, the assumption was it's once you do one in a certain time, you can keep doing it in the same time.
Every Spectrum owner eagerly awaited the final release of the trilogy, the now legendary Miner Willy Meets the Taxman.
Well, isn't there supposed to be a third one? Jet Set Willy Meets the Taxman or something?
Yeah.
Well, what happened to that? Is that...
The Taxman was way at the back of the queue there.
Oh, really? Without being rude, how much did you make from Manic Miner?
I did have a substantial sum, but I expected a whole lot more, so I spent what I had. Fairly foolishly.
You are the stuff of legend. You are a legend. There's no doubt about it. In this sort of world, you are. Can I run past some rumours that are on the net about you, and you can just tell us if it's true or if it's false? You lived in Holland in a commune.
This is, yeah.
When did that happen?
That was a great time. I went there in 95.
Okay, you worked as a fish seller.
No, I don't think I ever sold fish. I tried to get a job in a fish gutting factory. But I applied at the wrong time of year.
What does it feel like to know there are, sort of a lot of people interested in what you're doing now, 20 years after you wrote this?
Well, everything comes around and goes around. Like 5 years after I did it, I was a washout, and 10 years after I did it, I was history. But it's coming up to 20 years now, and I'm a legend.
Once invincible Atari has lost £200 million so far this year and sacked 1 in 3 workers.
Suddenly, in 1983, the American video game industry hit a brick wall.
Not since 1929 has an industry fallen so far, so fast. In this neighborhood in Florida, the Chuck E. Cheese Video Arcade closed down. Supercade Amusements closed down. And where the Space Odyssey Video Arcade once stood, Dollhouse 3, a strip joint.
Arcades weren't the only ones in trouble. The console market also collapsed. Powerful home computers made machines like Atari's 8-year-old VCS seem prehistoric. On top of this, a glut of terrible games seemed to make it game over for home consoles. But a small Japanese novelty toy maker had other ideas. Nintendo Koppei was founded in 1889 in the ancient imperial capital of Kyoto. For over 80 years it produced traditional Hanafuda playing cards, but in the 1960s it diversified into the novelty toy market. Board games, beam guns and love testers. In 1974, Nintendo produced its first video game, an electronic version of the traditional Japanese game, Go. But it was in the home console market that Nintendo was to have the biggest impact. The language of a generation changed as Nintendo firmly replaced Atari in the American vocabulary.
It was here in Kyoto at the Nintendo headquarters, which is that building just over there, in 1985 that Shigeru Miyamoto saved the video game industry.
Hello! It's me, Mario!
People warm to Mario because he's the antithesis of the superhero. He's not big and strong and muscular and blonde hair and blue-eyed. He's a short, dumpy Italian fella with a moustache and a big nose.
Mario is the video game superstar. A survey in the United States in 1989 found that more American children recognise Mario than Mickey Mouse. Mario is far better known than his creator, Shigeru Miyamoto. That is, except in the world of video games, where this former cartoonist is probably even more popular than Jesus.
Miyamoto may be the John Lennon of video games because he brought soul to games.
Everyone looks at the next Miyamoto game to find out, what new things the man has invented.
I first joined Nintendo because I heard they design equipment for children's playgrounds, and that's what I was interested in doing.